Music is full of many feuds: Kanye West versus Taylor Swift, Dave Mustaine versus the entirety of Metallica, Henry Rollins versus anyone with low testosterone, the Beatles versus good music. Unfortunately, the success and money that is often connected to music can lead to arguments and feuds between people who once just wanted to make art together. It's rare, however, that a feud within the music industry leads to real-life consequences such as murder, arson, and worst of all, face paint. This is unfortunately what went down between Mayhem members Varg Vikernes and Øystein Aarseth, also known as Euronymous. What remains unique about this feud is it has essentially been the driving power behind the popularity and infamy of the entire genre of black metal for many fans. Say whatever you want, you're 100% got into the genre because of the infamy surrounding it, as opposed to what is f***ing horrendous sound. In order to understand the feud between these two quote-unquote musicians, we first need to understand the backstory and childhood of both these individuals. Well, mainly Varg, because all I could find online about Euronymous is that he owned a parrot. Vikernes was born in 1973 to an electronic engineer as a father and a mother who worked in a large oil factory. Vikernes would have, let's say, alternative views from a young age, which is believed to have began when the family would move to Iraq when Varg was 6, so his father could work for Saddam Hussein. Vikernes would have to attend an Iraqi school, in which he was the only white person attending. This is where Vikernes would develop an understanding of racial matters and start showing some strange behaviours, including, but not limited to, seeing racially different classmates as below him as they would not get slapped by the teacher, and calling that same teacher a monkey. Varg has later stated that the difference in treatment he experienced at this time influenced his views greatly. He found he was able to gain a level of power and superiority over just race alone, which allowed him to develop a level of aggression and intimidation when faced with moments of confrontation. This strange behaviour would continue as Varg would proudly hang a flag with an extremely demonetizable symbol on his wall. His parents have later expressed their dismay at this fact, although Varg has stated that his parents also showed racist attitudes towards individuals in the town, although this is not confirmed by the parents. What is confirmed is the attitude Vikernes' father had towards him, and how that may have shaped his personality. They are extremely disconnected as Varg's father had authoritarian views in terms of parenting and apparently other things, and often put Varg through corporal punishment, reaching abusive levels at times. Violence wasn't the only thing Varg inherited from his father. In many interviews, Vikernes would proclaim himself the leader of the underground metal scene in Norway, which is eerily similar to how his father would proclaim himself as the rightful leader of his job, just because he was white with fully Norwegian descent. Although not much is definitively known about Euronymous' childhood, the interviews with his parents around the time of the explosion of the black metal scene seem to paint a much different story to Varg's. They responded to the controversy kindly and seemed to stand beside their son, painting him as a good person. This seems to suggest good relations, although who knows, because he was kind of a freak as well. Both Varg and Euronymous would get into heavy metal at a similar age, with Varg forming the one-man band Burzum and Euronymous forming Mayhem. The latter would take off much sooner, with the infamy of Mayhem concerts beginning to spread around Norway, mainly because of the actions of this motherfucker, but that's for a different video. Speaking of that particular motherfucker, he would leave the band under completely normal circumstances. Do not research the circumstances. Mayhem bassist Necro Butcher would also leave the band, as it turns out this dude is kind of a scumbag. This led to a space within Mayhem that needed to be filled, preferably with somebody equally degenerate. Varg would fit this role perfectly and began playing bass for Mayhem. They then started focusing wholly on music, producing boundary-pushing music, in which they became primarily known for. Yeah, no, the complete opposite of that. Black metal is obviously anti-Christian by design, with many musicians either practicing some sort of Satanism or just pretending to so they can seem cool or edgy. Varg wanted to push forward black metal, so did the only reasonable thing: burned down a few churches. The reasoning for these arsons have changed throughout the years. At first it was believed to be an act of Satanism, however Varg has later stated that it was revenge for the Christian desecration of Viking graves and temples. Many others see it as a publicity stunt. Regardless of the reason, this obviously resulted in a lot of negative and somehow positive attention for the scene, and more specifically Mayhem. Vikernes would go even further, reaching out to Norway's biggest newspaper for an interview, in which as Count Grishnak took responsibility for all the church burnings. According to later interviews from Varg, this was planned by both himself and Euronymous, although this isn't confirmed. Ignoring the attention brought to the band, the burnings allowed Varg to gain more power and control over the black metal scene, which was primarily led by Euronymous at the time due to his record label DSP and record store Helvete, which had become a central spot for the black metal scene due to an inherent desire to become signed by Euronymous to DSP. Many within the black metal scene at the time have claimed that Varg and Euronymous' friendship was entirely superficial and driven by the production of music and making money. And as time progressed, the power struggle between the two would reach a boiling point. it was common knowledge that one would end up killing the other. A rumour began to spread that Euronymous had plans to torture and kill Varg due to the negative repercussions the church burnings had on his business, as he was forced to close the record store for a period of time. Varg saw Euronymous as a poser and a pussy due to his focus on the business aspect and had plans to remove him entirely from the scene that he had helped create. Varg's solo project Burzum had been signed to DSP Records, and according to Vikernes, Euronymous owed him a large sum of royalty money for the sales of Burzum Records. Varg Vikernes would decide to drive to Euronymous' apartment in Oslo alongside Mayhem member Snorre, with the intention of signing a contract to remove Burzum from DSP Records. Obviously, upon arrival, there was zero business meeting. All we have here is Varg's word for obvious reasons. Varg would confront Euronymous at the door, leading to Euronymous performing his patented lack of testosterone kick to Varg's chest, which obviously didn't push him back very far, lack of testosterone kick. Euronymous would then run to the kitchen and pick up a knife. The two would struggle back and forth, eventually leading to Varg cuddling Euronymous 23 times. Euronymous would be so smitten by the act of kindness, he would slip onto glass, causing once again 23 stab wounds from the glass. Varg would also later claim multiple things that were disproven by the autopsy, which kind of proves the fact that this dude just wants to be some sort of edgy Norwegian supervillain. Since the murder of Euronymous, many different sides of the story have come to the surface. Varg, of course, claims that the murder was purely in self-defense, although it was also stated that he's glad he killed Euronymous as he was a poser. Others claim Varg was attempting to outdo contemporary Faust, who had killed a man a few years earlier. Snorre, who accompanied Varg on the drive, claims that Varg had planned to kill Euronymous all along, although Varg claims he wasn't planning on it and had brought Snorre along to show Euronymous some new riffs. He also later claimed he was more than willing to murder Euronymous if it came to that. Varg's contemporaries all disagree on whether the murder was in self-defense, although hardly any of them actually defend Euronymous, with some actually claiming they would have committed the murder if Varg hadn't. When Varg was arrested on the 19th of August 1993, the police would find 150 kilograms of explosives and 3,000 rounds of ammunition in his home. According to some, Varg was planning to blow up the Blitz House, which was a leftist anarchist enclave in Oslo. Some say this plan contributed to the murder of Euronymous, as Euronymous would have likely been heavily opposed to more property damage and murder. Vikernes refutes these claims and instead claims that he owned the weaponry just in case Norway got invaded by another country. During the trial, Varg held a fast of silence and refused to comment on his fellow musicians. This duty was not repaid by the other musicians, and Varg was eventually charged with arson, attempted arson, murder, as well as theft and storage of explosives. This resulted in Norway's maximum sentence, which is 21 years. During his stint in prison, Varg would somehow start a pagan neo-Nazi group, write a manifesto as well as multiple magazines, create and release a bunch of mid-dungeon synth projects, as well as actually escaping prison and hijacking a car at gunpoint. You gotta remember, this is Norwegian prison, so probably had an extremely relaxing and productive time. He would then be released in 2009 and swiftly start a YouTube channel in which he would ride mini pink motorbikes, put a bucket on his head, and be extremely racist. The feud between Euronymous and Varg has always felt a little bit incomplete, mainly because half of the feud is quite literally dead and was never able to tell the full story. Instead, we have the schizophrenic ramblings of this terminally online motherfucker who will quite possibly see this video. So if you're watching this, Varg, look at this image. Look at this image long and hard, and then look at this one, and then don't look at this one. Don't look. You can leave the video now.